G'day there guys, Marky here, and welcome back to another episode of r/Am I the Arsehole? Now with that said, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn on the barbie, and get ready for some bloody good stories. Let's go. Am I the arsehole for complimenting my boss's body? I, 24 male, work as a supervisor at a fast food joint. My former boss, 28 female, is extremely attractive. She left due to finding another job. When she first started, we got along fine, but she became quite distant and started acting standoffish towards me. About 2 weeks after she started acting weird around me, she asked the owner of the restaurant to get a new door for the back entrance as she is quite small and struggled to close the door when she would lock up at night. The door was overlapping the hinges at the top. I was there when she asked, and I said, maybe it's a good exercise so that you could build up your arms a little to match your thick thighs. She gave me a weird look, and I said that it wasn't meant as an insult, that she's in great shape. She ignored me, and I saw her talking to my colleague, a female supervisor, and they have both been super weird with me since. I don't think I did anything wrong. Am I the arse? Edit on the getting fired comments. I think she did speak to the head office, but I get along great with the director in charge of our store. He hasn't said anything or been acting weird towards me at all, so I really don't think that I did anything wrong. Now in the comments, you're the asshole, and if you were my employee, you'd have been fired already for that comment. Totally inappropriate. And the update for this story is actually this response. A friend sent me this and told me to piggyback on the top comment, so here goes. I am the woman in this post. Do you see now, Andrew? 1. Yes, we did get along in the beginning. 2. I don't know what you mean by my potty mouth, as I had only F-bombed a few times, one of which you felt it appropriate to respond with, F-word? F-word. And then almost chanting to yourself, don't say anything, there's a lady. Don't say anything, there's a lady here. 3. I caught you staring at me multiple times and I asked you to keep professional eye level. 4. Megan, the other supervisor, informed me that your ex made some claims about things you did to her. So major creep vibes right there that already solidified your creep vibes. 5. You stink. How many times did I have to address these staff on personal hygiene? Even after a day off, your clothes stank of sweat. 6. I did approach head office, and you know what I was told? Oh, he's a good boy. Sam thinks he has great potential. 7. And yes, I left because of the toxic work environment where some middle-aged men in their big-ass BMWs thought that I was being dramatic. So F that restaurant chain. Oh, so he isn't just a pervy creep, he is an unwashed pervy creep. Fantastic, OP. Wash your balls. And your clothes. I had a male coworker, same age, who needed to be told by his mummy/manager that he needed to show up to work in clean clothes and wear deodorant. So, OP, if your mummy hasn't told you this yet, you need to wear clean clothes and deodorant to work. Preferably all the time, but trust me, your coworkers don't get paid enough to deal with your stench. Quote, to match your thick thighs? Seriously, dude? Seriously? I know, seriously. Way to let everybody know that you've been ogling your boss's body parts from the top to bottom since you have a comment for every one of them with gross description. How is that not wrong? He's oblivious to the fact that he smells and that he's a creep. I wonder what else he's oblivious to. I wonder if Andrew is the same one whose parents and then grandma stopped washing his once-a-month laundry because he was smelly. Our next post is titled, Am I the asshole for not stopping my mother-in-law from wearing white? I'm so confused. Please help. I'm getting married soon, and we're having a traditional wedding. I'm Indian, my fiancé isn't, but he was fine with having an Indian wedding. My mother-in-law-to-be asked me if she could wear white to our wedding. I said sure, and now my fiancé is really mad at me. He says she's going to try to steal the spotlight, and she'll definitely show up wearing a long white dress, and it was very irresponsible of me to just agree like that. The thing is that 1, I'm not going to be wearing a white bridal dress, I'll be wearing a traditional red dress that, due to the design, type of silk, and embroidery, is very distinctive. So even if mother-in-law does wear a white wedding dress, it's not like it'll be the same. Also, this may be dumb, but I don't really get what the big deal is if my mother-in-law wears white, even if I was going to. As long as the groom doesn't get confused and marry the wrong person, how does it matter? Sorry if this is dumb, but my fiancé is really upset that I didn't stop my mother-in-law, and I just need some help understanding. I didn't mean to upset him. Edit: my fiancé knows what my wedding dress looks like. He has seen it. Edit 2, for those asking if mother-in-law knows how my wedding dress looks, I'm not sure. We have discussed what the wedding will be like. She hasn't been to an Indian wedding before, but I don't think we explicitly discussed what I will be wearing. I feel like she was confused when I said she is free to wear white, but that might be me projecting because the whole conversation was a bit confusing for me. OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the asshole. I said my mother-in-law could wear white to our wedding without asking my fiancé. I can see where your fiancé is coming from with this issue, but it does seem like it's in a realm that's completely separated from weddings that these two are used to, and they don't realize that this will be a complete non-issue. If anything, she will just be embarrassing herself. I do think that disruption though could be embarrassing, it could be cringe. Maybe he doesn't want his mum embarrassing him and having that reflect on him and reflect on you. Though in that case that seems like it's an issue that he would need to sort out with his mum since he's more personal with her. Or at least you'd assume he is. Either way, I don't think you're the asshole for saying that she could wear white to the wedding. I do think you need to talk with him though. Now in the comments, not the asshole, but please have a conversation with your partner. He knows his mum better than you do, and he may well be predicting some mother-in-law behaviour that will cause issues. Based on OP's fiancé's reaction, I'm guessing mother-in-law has a history of inappropriate and/or attention-seeking behaviour, and he is trying to break that cycle. OP should talk to her fiancé to get on the same page, and maybe going forward, tell mother-in-law that she has to run things by him. But see, I think her dealing and thinking she got one over just to discover the bride is in red would be glorious. Upstage the upstager. I think OP's fiancé should totally lean into that, pretend nothing is wrong, act unimpressed, etc. Yeah, I'm guessing from this post that mother-in-law has never been to an Indian wedding and has no idea what she is in for. You gotta wake up pretty early in the morning if you want to upstage an Indian wedding party. Not the asshole. It is pretty rude of her to ask to wear white. I know it doesn't matter to you since you're having an Indian wedding ceremony, but I think why your fiancé is mad is because I assume his family and other non-Indian people will be at the wedding, and it sounds like she wants to show off for them. It's his mom, so I would tell fiancé that if he is mad, then he needs to speak to his mother about it. Not the asshole. Your fiancé is probably upset because it's the ultimate in cliché monster-in-law moves. Unless she's just naive, mothers tend to do this because they want to be the center of attention. She may have something against you, or maybe she just can't handle not being the star of the show. There is also an ick factor because wearing white at a wedding kind of makes it look like she's trying to marry her own son. It sounds like your fiancé is trying to make sure you are the star of the wedding. He might also be expecting some more bad behavior on her part and thinks the dress is just the first step. Sit down with him and ask him to explain why he is specifically upset about this. Let him know that you aren't concerned since your lehenga is red, not white, so her attempt to steal attention is pretty weak. He might still be upset because of his mother's behavior. I'd suggest letting him address it with her. And OP replies, "Thank you. This helps me understand things so much better. It is pretty icky of a mother to be dressed like her son's wife. Now I'm starting to wonder if she knows that I'm not going to be wearing white." And now on to the update. So, as you all suggested, I talked to my fiancé about why he was concerned. He explained that his mother had previously joked that she would wear white, and he had told her point blank that she wasn't allowed to do this. He didn't tell me about this because he didn't want to stress me out. Apparently, she has a tendency to steal attention throughout his childhood, which left some trauma. So basically, when I told mother-in-law that she could wear white, he was very upset that I had given permission when he had categorically refused. But he admitted that it was wrong of him to get upset when he hadn't shared any of the background information with me. We agreed that going forward, we would be better about communicating and made up. But then he wanted me to call up mother-in-law and tell her that she couldn't wear white or else she was banned from the wedding. Which I didn't really want to do, because that sounded like a surefire recipe for open hostility. And like I said earlier, I don't actually have a problem with mother-in-law wearing white. I told him that he was welcome to tell her if he wanted, but he was insisting that I have to tell her because I was the one who gave permission. It was starting to turn into an argument, so I showed him the post and all of your great advice. This really helped. It helped him realize that even if mother-in-law wore white, it wouldn't really stand out, at least not in a positive way, and he loved your guys' idea of just not telling mother-in-law that I wasn't going to be wearing white. So we'll probably offer to buy her a sari, but if she insists on wearing a white dress, we just won't stop her. Thank you to everyone who gave advice. I'll try to update after the wedding. And now onto that update from OP's old fiancé. So, given the way that things turned out, it seemed fitting that I post this. I am the previous poster's then fiancé. After Pia, not her real name, posted, a lot of commenters said that I was wrong for not dealing with my mother myself, and I was especially wrong for getting mad at Pia without telling her anything. I didn't want to admit it, but the more comments I read, the harder it was to brush off. I don't have a good relationship with my mother. She was the type to demand gifts on my birthday because I wouldn't be here without her. For 18 years, I never got to open presents myself. Looking back, every event from my games to graduation was always about her. I always felt like my life and achievements were just an extension of her accomplishments. I think I suppressed my resentment because everyone around me always acted like this was normal. I didn't know how to cope with this, so I just tried to get as far away from her as possible. I applied to the furthest university I could realistically get into, and stayed far away because anytime I had to go back home, it was the same story. At university, I was lucky enough to meet Pia, and for the first time, I started to like who I was. I didn't feel like I had to hide or play down my accomplishments, or even my failures, and her family was so warm and welcoming. It felt like my childhood was just a nightmare of the past. I thought the best way to move past it was just to move ahead. I thought that I would be able to handle it now as an independent adult. After all, everyone says you're supposed to let sleeping dogs lie, and in my worst moments, I felt jealous of my wonderful fiancé for having such a welcoming and loving family, even though they were treating me like one of their own. I was ashamed of my mother's behavior and of the ugliness of my resentment, so I pretended that everything was fine and I invited my parents to my wedding. Until this post blew up, I don't think I really understood how important my wedding was to me. I mean, obviously, the whole getting married to the girl of my dreams is huge, but I mean the actual details of the whole ceremony. I actually had a really clear vision of what I wanted in the wedding, but a combination of my childhood trauma and the notion that the wedding is the bride's day and not something that men are supposed to care about made me unable to express it. I also didn't understand how badly I wanted an event that would be about me and not about my mother. This unholy cocktail of repressed and suppressed feelings led to me unfairly lashing out at Pia when my mother tried her old tricks. At that moment, I forgot that white wasn't the bridal color in Indian weddings. I just felt a cold sweat that another precious moment would be hijacked by my mother. I think Pia was shocked by my outburst because she had never seen me like this, and made that post just to get some perspective. Neither of us imagined the ramifications that it would have. I read every comment at least 10 times. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Unwanted memories kept invading my head. No matter how much I tried to bury my head in work or exhaust myself by exercising, I ended up having an actual meltdown that night. I was sobbing and crying. It was probably my ugliest moment. The next morning, I half expected to wake up alone and get a text that the wedding was off. Instead, incredibly, Pia stayed with me. She convinced me to go to therapy. She encouraged me through those first few hellish sessions and gave me space when I needed it. Therapy really helped. I was able to understand why I was feeling angry and upset and how to deal with it beyond just trying to ignore it. I apologized to Pia earlier, but it let me actually be honest with her about my family. It really transformed our relationship. I took over the wedding preparation with the help of my in-laws, and this turned out to be great for all of us. I got to actually design my dream wedding. My mother-in-law later told me that she was really relieved that we switched because my lovely Pia didn't really care any which way about the colors or flowers and had virtually no input on any of it as long as we were getting married. You might have realized from her post that she's a pretty nonchalant and easygoing person. She used to joke that she was fine with just exchanging garlands and calling it a day. My mother-in-law was also very encouraging and patient in letting me voice my input, and even found things that I didn't really know of, but loved, like riding a horse to the ceremony. We have a running joke that I seem more like her son than Pia because our taste is so similar. And the actual wedding went really, really beautifully. Pia was ready to rescind my parents' invitations completely after everything, but her terrifying little sister suggested we invite anyway as a final sort of FU to show them that I wasn't alone anymore, and no matter what they tried, this time, things would go my way. I have to admit that did appeal to me, so we decided to invite them for the third day of the ceremony, and it worked even better than I imagined. First, it helped that my mother had no real idea what an Indian wedding is like, so when she showed up in a long white tulle ball gown, security actually thought that she had the wrong address and didn't let her in. This was actually something I didn't plan, but the schadenfreude of seeing my mother fuming by the gate while other guests were let in was delicious. Secondly, compared to the embroidered silks and sleek satins of Indian clothes, my mother's ball gown honestly looked frumpy. Instead of stealing the show, she just looked like she didn't belong. This was accented by the jewelry, the Manchuri and Kungan, and earrings and bindis worn, compared to her much more sparse look. Pia looked especially beautiful in her red lehenga choli, with intricate henna covering her hands and feet. I'm probably biased since she's my wife, but she has the most beautiful inky hair, and it looked stunning adorned with gajra and gold bilai on her braid. Indian brides also wear something called matapati, which looked like a crown. It definitely made her look like a princess. I actually forgot about my parents and my insecurity, and pretty much the rest of the universe because I couldn't stop staring at her. Then my mother tried really hard to interrupt the ceremony. First, she tried coughing, but luckily Pia's aunt sitting right next to her gave her a cough drop. Then she tried to initiate a conversation, but Pia's niece loudly said in that high-pitched voice of children that really projects, "Don't you think it's rude to talk during weddings? I'm 5 and I know that." I later learned that she had been coached to respond this way by my wonderful, terrifying sister-in-law. The third time she tried to interrupt, Pia's cousin, who had also been coached by sister-in-law, jumped and loudly whispered that the food didn't seem to agree with my mother and needed to go to the bathroom immediately. I'm sure you can guess the implication, and basically pushed her away. After that, she stayed embarrassedly quiet for the rest of the ceremony. Throughout all this, the Panditji never missed a beat, and everyone else acted like she wasn't there. In the after-party, the difference between my mother and everyone else was unpleasantly accented by her ignorance of Bollywood and Tollywood dance skills, so she tried to refocus attention through conversation. She turned to my mother-in-law and started to complain about how hard it was to raise me. My mother-in-law, bless her heart, said, "However difficult children are, they bring 10 times as much happiness just by growing. Your son is such a wonderful young man. You must be so proud of him." My mother didn't like the direction of the conversation, so she turned to Pia and asked her if she was sure that she wanted to be with me. This was after we had gotten married. Pia looked at her like she was a bit slow and said, "Why would I be marrying him if I wasn't sure?" My mother loudly asked her again if she was really sure, because I used to wet the bed. I haven't done that since I was 8, but there she was, loudly announcing it for all and sundry. At that moment, I really, really hated her. It felt like there was something stuck in my throat, but no words came out. But Pia didn't have that problem. "You must be confused," she said. and it was so confident with a touch of concern that my mother looked like she was actually confused. Then she raised her voice so it could be heard over the music. "Dear my mother, I know we are family now, but it's much too soon right now, or ever, for me to hear about your bedroom activities." And then she dragged me away to the dance floor while people started to stare at my mother. Stupidly, the first thing I said in our first dance as a married couple was that my mother was right. But because I am the luckiest man alive, Pia just squeezed my hand and told me it happens when children are put under stress and that it wasn't my fault. That was pretty much the end of the problem, and I enjoyed the rest of my wedding, dancing, eating food, and talking with Pia, and now my wonderful family. I did see Pia and my sister-in-law having another talk with my mother later, but I was too far away to hear anything. It couldn't have been too bad because my sister-in-law smiled a lot, and my mother didn't try anything new for the rest of the party. By the end of the day, my mother looked incredibly constipated, but she hadn't managed to ruin anything. I felt so relieved when I said goodbye, like a weight had just slipped off my feet and my knees felt weak. It was the first time in my life that she hadn't taken over something that was supposed to be about me. After that day, I haven't had any more sudden, invasive memories of the past. I feel so incredibly lucky to have married this girl, and I feel like I might have done something really stupid after that fight if I hadn't seen so many strangers telling me the same thing until I couldn't ignore it. So in case anyone was still following this, I wanted to post a thank you. And now in the comments, the moment I saw the wedding was Indian Hindu, I bust a gut. I could see every single humiliation coming. I feel like I know OP's family because they're exactly like mine. Drama is something that we know how to handle. Painful relatives are an everyday walk in the park. The terrifying sister-in-law and the trained niece are exactly how my fam would have done it. Fiancé's mum was just outmatched. Hindu weddings are a riot of noise and color, except for the really long ceremonies. And because they are so long, everyone has strategies to deal with the painful guests who like to whine. Usually, those strategies are aimed at idiot teenagers, but I guess they work well for idiot old folk too. And I know they work because I used to be an impatient whiny teenager who has been at the receiving end of this. If she wanted to make a scene, she needed to step up her game big time. This was the big leagues, and she was playing Little League. Also, I wouldn't assume that her look of constipation wasn't serious. If the food was catered, there is a good chance that she was genuinely stuck with an upset stomach. If you aren't used to Indian food, especially wedding food, it'll knock your bowels for a 6. Every large party needs to have a few designated wranglers for the hosts. One day that niece will be training her child or nibbling in the art of difficult guest management. Also, I wouldn't assume the sister-in-law wasn't being evil near the end of the night, smiling at the mother. You can deliver a lot of mean comments while smiling if you're practiced. This is the first time I've appreciated the overbearing Indian family. I'm Indian. It's a lot. Here they are all banded together and planned and just buried the narcissistic mum. I think I'm feeling patriotism. First time ever. The mother-in-law thought that she would get one over on a people who have a genre of soaps specifically for nightmare mother-in-laws. Scream. I was thinking of serials too. Just imagining the slow-motion pan over to an angry woman in an ugly dress at a wedding. Magic. Sister-in-law should be a director. I was so scared when he said, then fiancé. Not gonna lie, that got me too. My wife hates it when I introduce her as my ex-girlfriend. Quote, I have to admit that did appeal to me, so we decided to invite them for the 3rd day of the ceremony. I'm dying she only got invited to the 3rd day. I know it would have been impossible to wrangle her for all of the ceremony, but that on top of everything else is sending me. She probably didn't even know that Indian weddings are longer than a day. Oh yeah, I have no doubt she has no idea that she had already missed 2 days of the wedding. Ignorance helped this couple big time. And that's where I'm going to leave you guys for today. I do hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, let me know what you thought of it down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.